Hey everyone, this is Anna Huthmaker from Huthmaker Violins, and you found another one of our videos in our Students Stuck at Home series. I've got a cool guest today. You've already seen him in a few videos, but our amazing luthier, our cello and bass specialist, Jonathan, is going to talk to us about how to make a violin. So let's switch out cameras, because I don't know anything about that, but Jonathan does. So Jonathan, tell us how to make a violin. Where do you start?
Sure. So it's a very long and process, and I could talk for a long time about it, so I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. So the way that you start to make a violin is you first have to make a mold. You're basically making the tools you need to make the violin. And this is all hand done. So this is the mold that would be basically a mold of the inside shape of your instrument. And just to make this and some of the other templates that are used to make the violin took me many, many days of class.
Okay, so I want to interrupt you because this is the thing I want everyone to really understand. This craft of violin making or cello making, it's not only very, very old, it comes from a very serious tradition. And what he just said is really important because the same is true for bow making. We actually make a lot of our own tools before we even get started, and that's a really special process. So,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No, that's great. So once you're done with the mold, the next thing to do, and you also make some templates. Here is an example of that, and you're basically making.
It's like a pattern.
Yes, the outlined shape of the violin that you are trying to make. So you have a printed out to scale copy of the instrument, and then you want to make a template that's the exact shape of the instrument.
All right, so when you went to class and you learned to make a violin, did they tell you which violin you were going to be making a copy of?
Yes.
And what kind of violin is that?
So this particular one is called the Hellier Stradivarius from 1679.
Awesome.
So normally when you're making an instrument, you're copying one of the master makers from several hundred years ago. And that's what this is. After you make all of your tools and templates that you need, the next process is to fit the blocks. And if you watch the video of the bass that we have in the shop, I showed you that you have a lower and upper block and 4 corner blocks. Now it's not just a matter of grabbing a piece of wood and making it kind of like that height and putting it in there. They all have to be absolutely the same height and width and all of that, and we're talking to the tenths of millimeters.
So what kind of wood is that?
So these are spruce, and the woods that you use to make a violin, that all the violins, cellos, violas, basses are made out of, are spruce for the top and maple for the back and sides.
Okay, so here's my question. So the spruce and maple that the spruce that you use to make the body of the instrument, is it going to be the same tree that you use to make your blocks out of?
No, not necessarily. The spruce, there's about 35 different species of spruce and almost 200 species of maple. The best maple comes from Europe, Yugoslavia, and Bosnia, and then the best spruce comes from Norway. You can think of maple as the tree where you get your maple syrup out of, and spruce as your sort of typical Christmas tree.
Gotcha.
But you have to have wood that is naturally aged. You don't want to just chop a tree down and then make an instrument out of it, because there's moisture in the wood, and it will change shape, expand and contract. So you need to use wood that's, I'd say, a minimum of 3 to 5 years naturally cured. This particular wood that I'm using for my top, actually this is the back. You can see that this is maple from Oregon, so you can certainly get wood from North America, and it was cut in 1988. So that's probably before some of you were born.
So it's been aging for 40 years.
Yes. And really, with an instrument, the older the better.
Yeah.
The Stradivariuses that are worth millions of dollars, those were made 400 years ago, and the wood was 100 years old then. So that has a lot to do with why they sound so good.
So how did you pick that particular piece of wood?
So this particular piece of wood was really just what was available to me. It was the oldest wood that my coworker Francisco Mello, who's an award-winning violin maker, studied in Cremona, who was teaching me how to make this one. This is what he had. So it's sort of like you go with what you can afford and what's available. But this is quite nice wood. You can see, if you look closely, it has what we call flame in it. And it's kind of, what do you call it? Like
a hologram.
A hologram, yes,
yeah.
that's the word.
So is this the same tree?
Yes.
How come one side is a different color than the other?
That's a very good question. It may just be that the wood, since they were two different pieces, that over the years one just got a little discolored more depending on how it was stored. But yes, this is the same tree.
Gotcha.
And now that we've gotten to this, so this is the back. Before you cut anything, this is what you're going to start with. Two sort of triangular pieces of wood, and you glue them together. Now some of them have one piece backs or tops, and that would be that much harder to find because you need a piece of wood that's that big. This is the spruce, and I've already glued these two pieces together. And so I don't know if you can hear this, but they call it tone wood for a reason. And a lot of makers will tap on the wood and hear what kind of note, what kind of sound it's making to make sure that it's resonating well. The majority of the sound from the instrument is coming from the top. The maple is also considered a tone wood, but much more from the spruce. So this is what you start with, and once you get to that point and you have your templates and you sort of trace the shape of your instrument onto that, you would use a tool like this, which is called an arching gouge. And what you do is it's basically like a shovel, but it's very sharp on the end. And you start chipping out pieces of the spruce, and you would do this on the maple as well. And eventually, this is kind of like in the middle of the process, you would get to this. And you can see there's the arching here. And I just want to show you, if Anna will do a close-up on this, this is a diagram of another violin that I made, and these numbers are millimeters. And so this just shows you how exact the measurements have to be. That's the thickness of the top and the back.
And I have to apologize to you all because it was upside down since I'm on the opposite side of the counter from Jonathan.
Yes.
So this is like your first steps to making a violin.
Right. And actually I kind of passed a couple of steps, because before you even get to the top and the back, after you glue the blocks in, you do the ribs. And that's, you start with a piece of wood like this, and you have to bend it to fit around the mold.
Okay, so that's a really great place to bring this video to an end. And
yes.
What we will do then, in our second How to Make a Violin video, Jonathan will start with the ribs and tell you how that's done. So that's a really cool process.
There's a lot to say, so I hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.
Do you have an assignment you can give them? Can you go Google something?
Yeah, let's see. If you want to Google some of the most famous violin makers, that would be interesting. Stradivarius, Guarneri, Steiner.
Why don't we actually start with Amati?
Okay,
and
Amati.
The reason because it's the easy one to spell.
And he's also the person that's considered to have made the first instruments.
Oh, and let me tell you, if you do an image search, you're going to get the most beautiful things.
Yes.
A-M-A-T-I.
Correct.
So thank you, Jonathan. You're a rock star as usual. We're sorry you're all still stuck at home, but we hope you learned something. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.